Hi everyone. I do hope that we do have a few people watching us already. So I'm just trying to swap the image. So hi everyone, hope you had a good holiday. Back to school. We are going to try tonight to create a backpack bag, quite suitable for this type of event, back to school. I've already advertised the design onto the page, but I've also printed the image so we can have it as a reference, and we'll start to create a cake and try to replicate this cute design and see what happens. Obviously, if you've got any questions to ask during the demonstration, feel free to pop your questions. If I will have the chance to answer them while creating the cake, I will do it. If not, I will reply to your comments a bit later. We've got 3 spots, and hopefully we will be able to cover the majority of the angles which we need for this demonstration. So let's return to the main one. Unfortunately, I will need to keep referring to the computer to change the angles of the camera, so I do apologize of turning myself from the main camera from time to time. We will look at the image which we want to replicate. I've just picked an image which I thought, oh, one of the phones is not on silence. So I picked an image which I thought is quite cute from online, and I've increased the size of the image. I'm just trying to mute my phone. Don't really know which one made the noise. Oh, it might be the computer. Let's turn this off as well, so that we don't get into trouble. So I've enlarged the image on my computer, so it looks a bit blurry, but it's absolutely fine for what I want to create. And I'm going to trim this part away, as I'm not going to do all the books. It's quite often when I create those kind of novelty cakes, I only get an image as inspiration. Sometimes I don't even use an image. I just go along with whatever I've got on my mind. But when I teach, I prefer to give students some inspiration, as quite a few of my students and myself, I was the same when I started to learn about cake decorating. I found very useful to have something in front of me as inspiration. Okay, so we'll see how we can transfer this image into a real project. I've already prepared a little cake on the side, so we are going to work on the real cake, which I've got here. The type of cake is not really important. I've got a vanilla and poppy seed sponge, very light sponge with some patisserie cream, literally just layers of sponge stuffed with some cream. This is not an order, it's just for us to see how we can create a project based on a real cake. So the taste is nice, but I did not pay too much attention about the thickness and and uniformity of the layers. So if you want to use a different type of sponge, it can be a Victoria sponge, it can be a chocolate cake, it can be a soft cake filled with mousse. But if you're going to use a soft cake, you always have to bear in mind that you have to maybe keep the cake in the freezer for about 2-3 hours before shaping. Is going to be much easier to work with. So mine has been sitting in the freezer since this morning, so it should be quite firm. I'm going to start by carving. There is not too much carving involved if we look at the image. We can notice that the front it doesn't have too much variation in size. If we measure this part, got the silly ruler, let's take another one which is more accurate. So if we take the measurements, we've got about 4 inches wide cake, which looks to be about 2.5 inches wide. Wide. So the front width about 4, the lateral width is about 2.5. Because it's offside, it just looks a little bit bigger. So you can obviously adapt the size and increase or decrease depending on the type of project you want to create and the number of people you want to serve with this cake. Just as a quick recap about what we are going to go through tonight. This book is going to be made up of chocolate, so we'll create a little book, like a box, just to store a few chocolates inside. The apple will be made with isomalt, so we'll just blow a little apple with hot sugar. And then the cake obviously will be real cake and it will be covered with fondant. We'll do various decorations, but we will decide what to use and what's the quickest way to do it as we go along. As I haven't done this project prior to this demonstration, I might come up with some ideas as we are going along. Now, the first thing to do, considering that I've got to make this cake as an order or as a project for a family party, I have to think about how I'm going to schedule all the jobs to save the time. So I've got the cake already structured. What I have to do is to carve the cake, cover with some buttercream. I've got some vanilla buttercream and I intend to use vanilla buttercream or ganache. Either one or the other will be fine. But just a firm consistency cream to cover the cake, just to get it ready for being covered with fondant. So I'm going to use fondant to create the outer edge covering of the cake. After carving the cake and covering with buttercream, this cake will go in the freezer to firm up while I'm going to create the base for my chocolate box, the book. Then while the chocolate box will set in the fridge, I'm going to start creating the hands and arms of the handbag and maybe look at some of the decorations which might need a little bit of setting time. Then I'm going to blow the apple using some hot sugar. Then I will ensemble the box and then take out the cake to cover and apply the decorations. So it's an involving project. I do hope we will be finished in about 2 hours, but we'll see how things are. It might take more or less depending on how quick we are going to move. So let's start with the cake first. I'm going to cover the area with some cling film. As you probably know already, carving is quite a messy job. So I will try to save some time and don't doing too much washing up. So just going to cover this with cling film. Now, while I'm preparing my table, let's change the camera so that you can see me. And maybe you can pop a question or something if you've got anything to ask while I'm setting the table. I wanted to actually get through to all the steps just in case that you need some inspiration for every step of the way. I'm going to wear some gloves. In fact, I'm going to use those gloves as they will get messy and they will end up in the bin. I'll probably change a few of them. They are first of all cheaper and they are kind of a poor quality, while the blue ones are better quality, more expensive and more reliable, so I don't need to keep changing them. I can wash my hands if they get a bit messy. So another thing which you can do, if you want to get an idea about the amount of the amount of cake you've started with, you can scale this piece of cake, this block of cake, if you want to. I'm not going to do it now. I will do it right at the end. I will try to save and not to dispose too much of this cake. But if you want to get an idea about how much cake you had on the first instance, you can always scale before you start carving. I typically intend to remove very little quantities, trying to avoid the wastage, but sometimes we do have to cut a little bit more. Just trying to also keep the area clean. If we get messy right from the beginning, it's not going to be great. Okay, so a block of cake. As I said, it doesn't look great, but trust me, it's really, really nice taste-wise. So it's just a vanilla sponge. I think we've got the recipe on the Academy of Cake Decorating group. Is with poppy seeds and coconut. Really, really nice type of sponge. And the cream is a patisserie cream. It looks a bit yellowish, as I've used quite a few egg yolks, and they've been quite nicely colored. Okay, so if we look at the image of the cake and we simplify it, we see that literally it's just like a rectangle type of shape. But on the side, it starts with slightly wider, going to slightly narrow shape. So I have to just carve a little. When it comes to the height, if I take a ruler and measure up, the image shows me a cake which is about 5.5 inches tall. Now my cake is 5.5 inches, so I don't have to add any extras. But in case that you make a cake, for example, you see those makeup handbags which are quite tall. If you start carving from the side and you realize that you don't have enough height, you can always put some cream and add the crumbs right on the top. Now when you do it for a customer, then you might not want to just put like chunks of cake. You might want to put a full strip, or you might want to create that kind of cake clay. It's called mixture, like when you do your cake pops, and it will look much nicer than to just put like, even if you put pieces, you can pretend that it's a mosaic type of thing. Okay, so using a cake knife is kind of a serrated type of cake knife. I don't sell this type of knife, and I can tell you it's a Schneider knife. It's very nice. This is quite sturdy, so but it's also about £35. So it doesn't worth investing in a good quality knife. But for carving, you don't necessarily need this type of knife. So it's mainly for cutting large pieces of cake. So part of the cake is not fully set, so you'll see the cream getting very soft at one point. But what I really want you to see is that I'm just tidying up, giving a bit of a curved shape to the cake. Now, if, for example, you are not quite confident in carving, you should start with carving little by little. So cutting small pieces, keep shaving to get to the size and shape required. Because it's easier to go step by step than just cut a big chunk and realize that you've cut too much and you have to stick it back. Now right here at the base, I'm going to round it a little, just to give that kind of round effect. So the base is a bit firm. Now the cake is super soft, and typically, I said with those soft cakes, if you want to carve them, you have to put them in the freezer, otherwise everything gets quite messy. So that's the reason why it's a bit difficult to cut. So I've got a little bit more to cut from here. You can also correct the shape when it's about just like 1 centimeter or so, less than half of an inch, by adding or removing some of your fondant. So don't panic if the shaping doesn't look perfect right from the beginning. So I'm fine with the front and the back. On the side, I don't have to trim too much. I literally have to straighten the sides, so just to get them nice and tidy. If you don't want to remove too much of this cake, what you can do, you can fill the gaps with some buttercream or ganache, whatever you use for covering. But then you have to make sure that you keep the cake in the fridge after, because all that buttercream, it will get super soft. Okay. So just looking, it looks a bit wobbly, so I will try and correct. I can also just push because it's such a soft cake. It does allow me to push it, and I have to step back and double check, so you've got a better viewing than I do. I'm not worried about the top, doesn't need to be perfectly leveled, as we will have the flap going over and also a few of those skull type of bits, which we will add. Now, for example, if you are planning to do a flat top and you want this to be perfectly leveled, you can just lift one side of the sponge and just insert a little bit more cream if you want to. Just because I did not do the layers perfectly leveled, then obviously I've got more or less cream in one side than the other. Ideally, if you want to get perfectly level layers, even if the cream is very soft, you work with a patisserie cream, or you might decide to work with chocolate mousse. If you apply the layer and then you put the cake in the fridge after each addition of the layer of the sponge or of the cream, then you will maintain that kind of nice and neat look. But I was in kind of a rush, like I typically am, and I just stuck a few layers and put the cream without, as I said, paying too much attention to the thickness of the layer. But I also, in this project, I don't really care and I don't mind having an uneven top. But if you are planning to do it flat, take, how is it called, a leveler, and then just make sure that it's all nice and flat. Okay, so I personally am perfectly fine with the way it looks. So I'm going to get my, first of all, change my gloves as they are quite sticky, and start applying the buttercream. Now, for those of you who might wonder if they can see the video after this live broadcast, it will only be available on the Academies of Cake Decorating group on the Facebook and on the YouTube page, and I think just on the Academy of Cake Decorating, not page, group on the Facebook and on the YouTube channel. And all the other live demonstrations, which will run now on a weekly basis, will be available for those interested to watch. But as I said, not on the page, on the Facebook group and on the YouTube channel. So, talking about the weekly demonstrations, I've put already the events for this month. If you've managed to have a quick look, you've noticed that next week I will actually be demonstrating for British Sugar Craft Guild branch. So the demo, it will not be available on our page. You have to go to the Surbiton British Sugar Craft Guild page and get the link and watch the demo. It's going to be about isomalt. But then all the other 3 demonstrations of the booked for the this September, they will be available to watch live on the Academy of Cake Decorating page. And then after that, on the Facebook group and on the YouTube channel. Okay, that looks quite good for me. I'm going to take off my gloves, which again will end up in the bin. Also, the crumbs which I've cut off, they will end up unfortunately in the bin. But if you want to use those to maybe make some cake pops, or you can create those apples, literally they are just large size cake pops. You can cover them with fondant or glaze them with candy melt and pretend that you've got more than one apple. Okay, so I'm going to cover this base with clinker. I always intend to cover the cakes, the carved cakes, even the just regular shape cakes with cling film, because it keeps everything clean and it just helps me to rearrange the layers in case that they just move around. It also helps me later to smooth the sides. If you are wondering why buttercream and not ganache, because I had buttercream already made, and I don't think it's a huge difference between buttercream and ganache when it comes to this type of cakes. Either one or the other will do. Yeah, I think it's a matter of preference, but also it really depends on how stressed you are about doing this project. If you have to do the project based on buttercream and then you have to do just some ganache only to have something to cover with, it might not make sense. Okay. My dehydrator bips. I've actually started to dehydrate some fruits, and it's just beeping that it's done. So this will go in the freezer while we are doing the rest of the details needed for decorating the cake and doing the chocolate box. This will just go in the freezer. Just looking again to make sure that it doesn't look too wobbly. Good. Just bear with me one sec. I'll be back. And carry on with the tidying up. I don't need the knife anymore, so tonight, this evening, I'm referring that I don't need it tonight, but I will need it later. So it will get washed at one point. This will go in the bin and just have to tidy up the area. We said about the next step is creating that chocolate box. So first of all, I'm going to start melting my candy melt. Just got some kitchen paper as the, I keep saying it candy melt. It's not actually candy melt. I'm pretty sure you've heard for many times about that type of chocolate which doesn't need tempering. So it's called compound chocolate, because it's quite similar with the chocolate, but instead of containing cocoa butter, which requires tempering, it contains a different type of vegetable fat, quite often palm oil or coconut oil or whatever. Every producer will just use different mixes of vegetable oils. But vegetable oils which are firm at the room temperature. Sometimes they go higher melting point than the cocoa butter, so they behave quite nicely when it's very hot outside. So I'm going to use that type of chocolate which doesn't need tempering, purely because it's quite warm in here. You know, I've got about 22 degrees in the room, and to work with chocolate you need about 18 degrees to 20. And it also takes a little bit more time to melt, to temper, and so on. So I'm going to melt first some brown chocolate. So we'll call it chocolate, but it's not chocolate. It's just some chocolate compound. Let me just change to the, the front camera just to show you. Yeah, it looks like chocolate and it behaves nicely. So trust me, if you're not a huge fan of chocolate, you can very easily take it that it's chocolate, but it's not. So I'm going to pop it in the microwave. Same like with the chocolate, you cannot set it to 3 minutes and forget about it. It needs to go through 30 seconds. You have to stir. 30 seconds, have to stir and see how long it takes for everything to get melted. So we'll just set it to 30 seconds. Now, my microwave is not a super powerful one. I think the power is about 800 watts. But regardless the power of your microwave, if you go with 30 seconds increments, then you should be safe. I don't think you will manage to burn your candy melt. I've got also a silicone palette to stir. And what else do I have? Just looking for where I put my stuff. We said about making the chocolate, a box, a chocolate box in the shape of a book. Okay, so we'll keep talking and stirring and talking and stirring till we get this melted. So we have to make the covers. To make the covers, you have to pick something to use instead of a mold. Now, you say, but why don't we just buy a mold? First of all, it will be difficult to find one in that kind of shape. Secondly, you have to stick with that size or keep, jiggling with it. Maybe use a hot knife to cut if it's not the right size, or stick another piece if it's too small, cut away if it's too large. So you can just pick something else, like a piece of plastic. A plastic which is suitable for food contact. So those kind of boxes, for example, this size is perfect. We said about the width of our cake being about, I think it was 5 inches, so that's about 6. So it should be enough for me to rest my cake on top of this. Okay, so I can just pour my chocolate on this lid and get the cover. But I'm not going to use this one. That was just an example. I got something a little bit bigger. Those are the basis of some boxes which I typically use for packing cookies. And the reason why I want to use those, because I've got those kind of fancy shapes, and I think the cover of the book will look more interesting. So what I have to do, because I've got 2, I don't have to wait to set one and then set the second. I can set the both at the same time. I will pour the melted chocolate to a certain thickness. If it's too thin, if it goes below maybe a 1/4 of an inch, it will break very easy. So I'm going to try to put about 1 centimeter, yeah, in between, not quite 1.5 inches. That's probably a bit too thick. Just slightly under. So 1 centimeter you'll be fine. So this is my second session of melting. Oh. When things like this do happen, it's easier to leave the chocolate to set firm and then pick it up. Less mess than if you try to remove it while it's warm. So actually I've warmed up this for now like a minute. I will keep stirring because I'm pretty sure I'll manage to melt the chocolate completely, as there's a lot of heat already stored inside of this. Bear in mind the chocolate is always messy, so be ready to get covered with chocolate. Okay, so keep stirring. Let's change the camera so that you can see what happens from the top. Okay, so keep stirring, keep stirring. Still got a few little blobs. Now, if you are looking for a perfect project, then you should put this in the microwave for maybe another 10 to 15 seconds. But even if I would get some little, pieces of chocolate sticking through, I will still be okay. So I'm not going to melt this anymore. But what I'm going to do is I will melt some white chocolate as well. Same sort of chocolate, but it's white. So I'm going to put this in the microwave for 30 seconds while I'm pouring this one in here. It just saves the time. And the time, as you know, is quite precious. So I'm going to keep pouring. Now, if you want to make them identical in size, you can put that on a scale. And that's also going to give you an idea about how much chocolate you've used, and start jiggling. Okay. So for 166, we'll just go for 200 grams, as I do have the weight of a little bit more than 200. But say if you want to make something super precise, what you can do is just to dip your silicone spatula into your, and then shake, make sure it's all flat and leveled, so that it doesn't turn up thinner in one side and thicker on the other. And now you can just go for 400 grams, as you know for sure that that's going to be okay. And then just tap. Okay. By tapping, you will remove the air bubbles, and also you will level the chocolate. Okay. And as you can notice, this kind of got half set. I will leave it till it sets completely, and I will show you how that looks like. So we'll change the camera now. This will go into the fridge. You know for sure that with the chocolate, you cannot just pop the chocolate in the fridge after you pour it on your mold. You have to leave it to set at the room temperature, start getting the crystals, good crystals, and then you can go in the fridge. But when it comes to this compound, you can just pop it straight into the fridge. It actually behaves better if you go straight into the fridge than if you keep it at the room temperature to set and then you put it in the fridge. So I will have to leave it for 1 sec, just to put this in the fridge. Sorry for the absence. The thing is, I got a fridge right here, but we also keep food into that fridge, and all my chocolate and cake fridges are on the other side. So with the chocolate, even if it's not like real chocolate, is candy melt or compound, because they've got a high percentage of fat, those products, ingredients, intend to absorb any kind of odor. So if you don't want your chocolate to smell as, I don't know, garlic or bacon, make sure that you put it in a place where you don't have any kind of food, or if you've got any, even if it's like cake with vanilla flavor, you will end up having a chocolate with vanilla flavor. If you don't want that, you have to make sure that it's all odor free. Good. Now I've got this little flower former, it's called. You know when you make a book, yeah? On one side you've got that kind of a round type of shape. I don't even know, oh for God's sake. I don't know exactly how it's called, but I can replicate very easy using this flower former. Okay, so I can use either the wide part or the narrow part by just turning this upside down. That really depends. Stop it. Sorry, I have to tell them to stop. It just means that if even if you turn your phone off, the WhatsApp is still sending you notifications. Okay, so I can use one or the other, and I'm going to protect this with something like acetate paper. You've heard about the guitar sheet probably. If you've got none of them, then you can use the cling film. And decide which one you want to use depending on how deep you want that chocolate box to be like. If I want, for example, to fill that chocolate box with cookies or like Raffaello's or chocolate bonbons, I need to make sure that the depth of the box, it will allow me to put those inside. So this looks a bit too small, so I'll have to go for the deeper one. Okay, so what I have to do is to get this acetate paper. So this is the type of paper I'm referring to. If you ever had like edible printing done, this comes as a backup of your icing sheet. It's more like a strong type of cellophane, but you can also use cellophane. That's absolutely fine. Okay. Now I know the length and the width of my book, and it just happens to be the same size with my acetate paper. So if I will just use this as a guide, that would be great. So I'm going to place this in here. Just going to look and check if that's sorted so I can remove it from here. Just bear with me one sec. Just have to take a knife or a palette and scrape it off. See, when you've got too many tools handy, see, that's already set, so I can just place it in here. And get rid of the mess in a second. Good. Now, in the meantime, I will just look at my white chocolate, see if that's done, or if it has to go back, because I have less here than I had on the dark colored one. So I will have to place it back for maybe another 10 seconds. Now, to make sure that I'm not messing the area, I will just place this onto a piece of plastic and go to my former. Oh, sorry, I have to be careful, as I don't really want to overheat this. The more you warm up, the more liquid it gets, and obviously over 50 degrees you start burning, so you don't want to burn this. You want to keep it nice and runny. Okay, so you see it's super running, flows nicely. And temperature wise, if we check the temperature, that's about 45, yeah, so it is quite warm. So we'll just place this in here and then just take the measurement. That should be enough. You don't necessarily need to cut. I'm going to cut because it's easier to work with this when it's a smaller size. And okay. Now this probably is not going to stick to the surface nicely, so what I'm going to do, I will get some vegetable fat, like Trex. It can be anything, not necessarily Trex. It can be absolutely anything you like. And I'm just going to run this in here. Now, because the end of my strip is not sealed, I might end up with lots of chocolate on the table. So I'm going to put this cling film on the surface, place this over so that it can fit nicely, and I can just protect the ends So even if my chocolate starts running on the side, it doesn't go on the table. And I can just put something underneath, maybe like a board, so that I can transfer this right into the fridge when it's done. Okay, now I'm going to take my Candyman, and I will use this as a support. And pour some. Now, if it's too runny, and if you cannot get a very thick layer, don't panic. Just put a thin layer, place it in the fridge, it will firm up, and then you can coat with a second coat and get a much thicker finishing. Okay, so don't panic if that happens. It's not the end of the world. Because it's so runny, sometimes it's difficult to put a thick uniform layer. And I've got those cups with a base which is made out of some soft silicone, and it sticks to the table, which is good because when you work with things like royal icing or chocolate, that's quite often when you end up putting everything on the table. So that's fine because it just takes a little bit of effort to take it away, but when you want to take it away, it doesn't come off as quick as you want. Okay, so I think it's quite a decent layer here. If you want both sides to look nice and smooth, then you can put another acetate paper on the top. Okay. But I don't really care how it looks on that side, so it will be fine. Just looks good enough. So I'll leave it to kind of set for just a little bit, and then I will transfer it in there. I will not leave it for a very long time because it's going to get too hard and it will crack. Just a little to allow me to transfer it without getting a weird finishing. That's too much white in here, so the light starts waving. Okay. So just leave it on the side for just like 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll set it into our form. Good. Let's go back to our photo. So we've got the parts. Oh, now I've just realized that I've made this side of the book white, but it's fine. We'll just put some decoration with brown. It was supposed to do the rest in white. Silly, isn't it? Now, this part of the book where we kind of see the pages, it can be done with some strips of chocolate. Now we also have to find something to use. Not the same thing we've used for doing the covers, because we don't want the fancy shapes. So on this case, using this lid, it will be great. And I'm going to just make like a full piece of white chocolate, and I will cut using a hot knife to the size required to finish off my box. What I have to make sure is that I've got enough here. Kind of. I will just make it out of a few more pieces. You will see what I'm referring to when it will be done. So the white chocolate. Just going to pour it in here. And this will go in the fridge. In regards with how long should stay in the fridge for, it depends on the temperature of the fridge, temperature of the chocolate, thickness of the layer. So we've got many other things to do, so I will not be worried about the timing. But generally I would say if you leave it like half an hour, it should be okay. I will show you what to look for to notice if it's done or not done when we take everything out from the fridge. So just go back to my, let's change the angle. Okay, just go back to this support. Trying to pick this bit and transfer in here. You see, that was the thing I was telling you about. If it's too soft, it will all run towards the center. So you have to make sure that that doesn't happen. Or if it happens, you can keep an eye and then just keep spreading till you notice that it gets firm and it doesn't move anywhere before placing it in the fridge. Now those edges will be cut away anyway, so don't panic if they don't get the same sort of thickness. It can all be corrected when the time comes. So I'll just place this in the fridge as it is, and we'll see if we can. If we have to correct, we'll do it later. Great, so it seems that I have to get someone to do the fridge thing when I demonstrate, as I have to disappear too often. Good. So we've got the bits made for the book. We've got the cake. We have to prepare now the decorations of the cake first, and then we'll do the apple, and then we'll put everything together. When you do such a thing like a bag, handbag, or backpack bag, it doesn't matter. Majority of the novelty cakes will work in the same way. If you've got an image which is printed and you follow the dimensions, it's very easy. You can create all the decorations before you assemble the cake, and then just take the cake out of the fridge just before you cover it. Okay, that's exactly what we are going to do. So we'll take decoration by decoration and see what we can create and have ready for when we take the cake out from the fridge. I'll just have to water my throat. And get the colors. We will kind of replicate those colors. So we'll get some yellow to create the hands, and then the arms with blue. So yellow and blue. And I'm using Saracino, but it's the pasta top, not the modeling paste. It's a type of fondant. It's great for covering. It can be rolled out very, very thin, but it also works for basic modeling, like in our case. Okay, so I have to make two small pieces. In fact, we can make this into a slightly different color. Maybe the same color for his arms, like the color we are going to use on making the front pocket and the side pocket. So we'll get some white, and this is just PME fondant, so just like normal fondant. I'm going to put some gloves on. And then just take a pinch of glue. Okay, just a small piece will do, as I want to make a mix and I want a lighter color. Obviously you don't need to use the same colors like on your the photo you use as an inspiration. You can adapt the colors to whatever suits you. Okay, so it's just like a random mix. I don't really know how much white, how much blue. It's just to get a different shade of blue, and I'm trying to press hard just to smooth the fondant. The PME fondant is quite soft, but the pasta top from Saracino is a firm fondant, and that is practically the reason why it can be rolled so thin. It allows you to apply pressure without breaking. So that is the good part. The difficult part is that you have to apply a lot of pressure, so you have to be quite fit to do it. Now, all the soft fondants are easy to roll, but they intend to crack, break, create air pockets like this one in here. So I always have to look to what you need. Now with the yellow for the arms, I'm going to mix the yellow with a bit of white as well, as this feels a bit too bright for me and I don't want to get a headache from it. Far too bright, so I'll try to soften. Okay. Great, so we've got the blue and we've got the yellow. And we also need something to support inside of the cake. Now, I would personally recommend to build up this onto a plastic dowel, and then have this wooden skewer inserted into the cake, and then literally just attach the hands on the side. Say if you have to transport this cake, and if you put the hands, which will then turn up quite heavy, on the side, they might rip the fondant. But if you only have them set onto the plastic dowels, that's going to be a very easy job. So this is going to be this kind of size, and the other one should be the same. That's a little bit bended, but the fondant will help me to create that effect, so it'll be fine. Good. So we'll start by working on the arms first. Just getting a small piece of blue and just covering this tube. So you see, very, very easy. And then just roll and cut off the excess if there is any. You only need a thin layer. If you want to get it more secure, I don't think they will make any difference. But if you want to stick it completely onto this plastic pipe, you can moisten this with glue or water or egg white or whatever you prefer. I'm just going to be fine this way. And I will just do the same thing with the other one. And then I will cover the rest of the fondant. With the pasta top from Saracino, it doesn't dry so quick. Typically those type of fondants like by Bora, Satin Ice, those top quality fondants, they don't dry super quick, but eventually they do dry because it's just sugar. So you have to keep them covered if you don't work with them for a long time. You can also just push in the excess fondant. Okay, so I've got the both arms, made one bigger than the other, but that's not a problem. It's not going to show. And then you start making the hand. Now, if you don't know how much to use, you can estimate. Pick a piece of paste and place it next to the hand and see how much you need to create that sort of a shape. So don't start with a huge amount of paste thinking that you will have not enough, because you literally just need a little, and you can scale and see how much you've used on one and replicate on the second. So you've got like 18 grams, it can be 20, it can be 15. I'm just making sure that the scale, yeah, 17 grams, so I need to go to 34, 36, 34. You'll be fine. Okay, now with the shape of my hand, let's see if I can move the camera to this spot, if it's going to give you a better look. And I can also sit. Okay. I might have to lean too far away. Where am I? In here. Okay, so we've got this little blob of paste. In fact, let me just get into here. Just bear with me 1 second. I'm still not happy how the camera takes the image, so it just makes me to lean on the table, and that's not great. It should be better now. Yeah, much better. Okay, so to do the hand, yeah, we've got kind of a piece of yellow paste to outline the thumb and the fingers, and then to do the kind of wrist. I don't know how to call it, but I'm going to use a veining tool, but you can also use a knife if you don't have one. So we start squashing this paste to get it round. Okay. Then we'll outline the wrist. See, just going around. That looks like a cherry tomato. Okay, and then I will outline the wrist. As I said, very easy. You can do it with the back of the knife. I wouldn't use the blade, as you might cut through too much. Okay, then this part you can flatten a bit. Just highlight a little bit more. Okay. You flatten this a little, then you split the fondant. It's like a box glove. Okay, and you rounded this thumb and shape. Okay, then with the rest of the hand, you just stretch to make it look pretty much equal. Now I have to judge which one goes where, so that's going to be his right hand, and in here I will just press. Okay, and then I will just outline the fingers. So I have to do 4. So if you find easier, start with the middle, do the center first, and then just do the rest, whatever works for you. Okay, and then you press a little bit more, just to shape. Okay. Now if you want to highlight even more those details, you can brush them with something with like a kind of a different color. It can be pink, it can be brown, a little bit of gray. Then inside I have to make a hole where to fit my arm. Okay, just going to enlarge this. Okay, bear in mind, so that's how it's going to look like. And I will just have to enlarge to fit this inside. I can even pop my finger. Then I can stretch and bring this over when it's done, so I'm not losing the wrist. Okay, that's what I really want to see. There is no need for putting any glue, and I can tell you why. This is going to be inserted into the wooden skewer. You see? So if you are afraid that this might collapse, you insert the wooden skewer and you bring that wooden bit right to the top. So no worries about putting any glue. It's just pointless. Okay. If we need to change something, we'll do it and do some more indentations or highlights. We'll do them when we will set this on the cake. But for now, we are just fine. Okay, that's one of the arm, of the hand. And now we have to do the second, which will be done pretty much in the same way. Okay, again, just a ball shape to get rid of all the cracks. Outlining the top. And just go with the knife. Insert the tool to enlarge, because enlarging, it just causes a lot of trouble, as you can very easily change the shape, especially if you're a beginner on modeling. You might find that if the paste is soft and you press too hard, everything turns up into a mess. You have to take it slowly. Okay, and then now we have to flatten like we did previously. And we will highlight the thumb. This time it will go this way, so we have to put the thumb in here. Just cut through the paste, tidy up. Yep, so it's always nice and smooth, doesn't have any weird shapes showing. And then flatten this. You would do the, if you do like Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse, they've got the similar kind of shape on their hands. They don't have 5 fingers, they've got just 4. I mean the thumb and 3 fingers, not the thumb and 4 fingers. Okay, so in here we've got 4, so we have to just mark the center, then mark one and the other, and then obviously we have to just keep pressing till we get the shape we want, the length we want, and so on. But we don't have to be super accurate, as it's just a cake, and it's not for a competition or anything. It's just to put a smile on someone's face and to give people a bit more I don't know, either way people do enjoy cake. They don't have to see them, they look pretty, as they love cake. Majority will be tempted by the sugar, not the way how it looks like, but we just want to get it nice and pretty. Okay. Good, so that's the second hand. So we've got now one and the other ready. I do have a little fan here, which I typically use whenever I've got something to dry quicker, when I feel too hot. So I'm going to place those in front of the fan so they will have the chance to firm up while we are working on a different detail. So we can now make the handle, and to make the handle we are going to use some brown. Now this time I'm going to use the pasta model. It's still Saracino, but it's pasta model. It's got a high percentage of cocoa butter, so I don't need to put a wire through. We'll just try and keep this cake with a very little amount of non-edible stuff. Yeah. So we'll have the plastic dowels and the wooden skewers, but for the handle we'll just try to put 2 small skewers just to set it. I think you've noticed how the handle looks like. Yeah, so we've got this little handle, and also we've got the strips on the back, which I can show you how to make, even if they might not be visible on the end project. So just a full hand of brown. I'm not giving the quantities because literally you can use your template and replicate the size. Now depending on the size of your template, your handle might be slightly smaller, slightly bigger than mine, and then using the same quantities of paste it might not look like proportionate. So if you've got a template, then you don't have to stick to quantities. Okay, we're just going to pick this piece of paste. As I said, it's quite firm. I'm going to roll it as a sausage. Now, if you are not super confident that you can roll it nice and smooth so that it looks even, you can use a smoother. I'm just looking to see where my smoothers are. Yeah, and then by just using the smoother and rolling that on top of your kind of sausage, it will just make it to look quite nice and even. It's a bit thicker than the one I've got in the photo, but bear in mind, transferring this image into a real cake, it will give it a different dimension because it will be like 3D, not flat. So I think it will look fine, even if it's a bit thicker than whatever I've got here in the photo. So I'm going to trim this end to make it nice and tidy, and then just take the measurement. And you can also change some of the measurements. You don't necessarily need to follow them identical on size. You can just come up with your own ideas. Okay, then I'm going to use a toothpick, or it's more like a cocktail stick as it's quite long, but I'm going to, in fact, let's leave it full. This is going to be inserted into the cake, but that's going to go on the side to dry as well. Good. Now I'll just show you how I will do the strips if I will have to. I don't think I will, because I said if you look at the cake from the front and from the side, you probably don't see the strips on the back. But just in case that you are going to attempt to make one with the strips being visible, just trying to get my ruler if I can find it. Just a small ruler. I'm going to roll this as a strip. You can also use the pasta machine if you want to, and you roll to the whatever length is required. And you can use like something like a guide to cut a strip, to make sure it's got the same width. Then also you tidy up the ends. As I said, just make it as long as you want, okay? And then when you finish it, then you can leave it like this, single. You can just roll another one same length and overlap. You can put some stitches on the side. Let's see if I've got the stitch wheel here. I don't have the stitch wheel. I should have it somewhere. Just bear with me one sec. See if I can find one. If I cannot, they probably disappeared. This is another type of stitchy tool. Is not, you know, the one which looks like a wheel is nicer because it just runs and gives you a much nicer texture. But this will do a similar job. So you can just emboss and create this effect. Yeah. So it can be like double layer or single layer if you use just one single layer, and you can put the stitches if you want to. And then you can obviously attach those on the back of the bag. I'm not going to do it because I don't think it's relevant for our decoration. Now, on the vase cake, I'm going to have those two pockets where I said I'm going to use the blue to create them. This looks more like a rolled piece of paper or fondant. Obviously, in my case, it's going to be fondant. So just roll it, not super thin, so I'm going to add a little bit more as I don't want it very, very thin. But you can also just make like a kind of a pocket. But I'm just trying to mimic what I see in the photo. It's quite often when people get kind of frustrated they cannot replicate something because they think too much about how to make a pocket. But if you look in here, it just looks more like a roll, and this is what I'm going to replicate. So just going to cut the ends to tidying those up. Then in here you can see that this is the flap, the top, that will have to come like here. Yeah, so that's cut a little bit round. That's round. Then in here I have to trim just to tidy up. Okay, so that's going to be the flap which will go over. And then with this bit, I have to go in here. Yep. So that's how it looks like. And it's pretty much the size I've got here. But I did say when you transform this 2D into a 3D, sometimes it doesn't look right. So I'm going to make it slightly bigger. So we'll just stretch the fondant a little bit more. The top will remain the same. It's just the base. If you are afraid that the fondant will start getting too stretchy, always use something like a support. And just push it back. The fondant is super, super forgiving, so don't forget about this. Okay, this will also go on the side, and we'll see. Oh, in fact, I made it too long. I've just noticed that I have to follow this template. Now it doesn't want to come apart, so I'm going to cut from here and then just tidy up from here. So just rescaling the length. Okay, that's good. Now the side pocket, that's going to be done in a slightly different way. Okay, I can use a cutter. This looks more like the back is like a rectangle and the front is like an oval. So I'll just cut this rectangle shape. I also have to remind myself to stick to the size which I've got here. Try to make the base a little bit round as well, so that it looks a little more fancy. Okay, so that's going to be the base. And then I need a strip. I'm going to roll a sausage and then flatten. Now this strip should go around the edge, if you can see in here, yeah, so it goes around the edge. So I'll just cut this bit, cut this bit. If you are not too sure that you can maintain the same width, use a ruler and just take measurements. I'm fine to judge by the eye. Okay. And I'm just looking for some glue now. And a brush. You can make your own glue by mixing some water with CMC, or we'll just use some ready-made. That's the PME glue. And we'll just brush a thin layer in here. And I will try to set this upright. Might be a bit challenging, but I think it's going to set fairly quick. Especially that I've got that little fan on the side. Don't think it would be very complicated. Okay. You can also pop something like a plastic bag to support the edging so it doesn't collapse. Then with the scissor, I'm going to trim this. So I'll just try and lift it and place it on here. Okay, so that you can see. Yeah, it's similar with the back of a shoe. Yeah, so I'm going to put that piece over and then the flap. So I've trimmed the ends more like in pointed shapes. Okay, good. So I will let this to dry, because if I will flip this right now, it might collapse. It's a bit too soft. So I just want to take the measurement so that I know it's done. Or what I can do, and I think that's going to be easier to do, as it can dry, I will insert this plastic in here. I say the ideas come as I go along. Okay, now I'm going to trim. Trying to mimic the same sort of shape, but no problem if you cannot do it identical. You can use a template and obviously do it identical, but if you don't do it identical, then you can always use a scissor and just trim the excess, if there is any excess. Okay, make sure that you don't catch that plastic bag. And then again, just use the scissor and then just cut the top. Don't worry if it doesn't cut perfectly straight, because you will have a flap going over. Okay. And just doing quickly the flap to go over. that's going to go in here. I have to trim the sides. Then for round cutter, and I'm just going to press to get this shape, and then just tidy up so that it looks nice. You can also use a stitchy tool, put some stitches. And obviously you can put more, you can emboss, you can do so many things, but you all they all take time, and we don't have that time available. Either way, our project is quite complicated. Now, if I leave the flap here, then it will be a bit tricky to take the plastic away. So just leave this flap open. It will be perfectly fine. No matter, it's not going to dry or anything too much, so that I cannot remove it. But what I will try to do is to move it onto a plastic, a much softer plastic, because I will, first of all, I will need this piece of clear mat. Secondly, this plastic is softer, and if it really sticks to the plastic, I can peel it off much quicker. Okay, just trying to move those on one side so that I can put this in here. So I've got the pocket, I've got the arms. I have to make that little bit on here, which is literally just the lock. It does look more like an oval shape. Yeah, a little bit more elongated, but with this part cut. I know which one is the noisy phone. Okay, that's done. Then I have to put this strip with yellow. We'll see when we finish with the cake, if we've got time to do that one. I will show you at least one part so that you can know what to do. Now, to make the ruler, for example, that's going to be a bit time consuming. I will show you how, but you will probably have no time to do it. You can also make it out of chocolate, because that sets quicker. But I'm going to make it green, and you only need a little bit, so we'll try and see if we manage to do it. And if it dries, then it's fine. If not, I will attach it to the cake later when it dries. Okay, so all you have to do is just roll a piece of fondant, get a small ruler. That's probably going to be a bit too large, so I'm only going to use one side to trim. Then I'll try to make it a little bit more thin. Okay. Right, yeah, now it's green on green. You might not see very much for now. And all you have to do is just to replicate the information from here. You can obviously mark with a knife, mark with a food marker, whatever, with both. Depends on how much time you've got available. And this is going to go on the side to dry. We only need one part, the top part, which is visible. And if it doesn't dry, what we can do is we can try to insert a toothpick. So we'll see how it turns up. Or we can dip the toothpick into chocolate and just support the back of the ruler. Hopefully I've turned the sound off. Okay, then we have to do the eyes. Now to do the eyes, I'm going to use white. And also, I need a round cutter, similar size with the size of the eye. But I also have to make the glasses. Now, to make the glasses, I can use that light blue, as it will stand up on the dark blue. So we'll start by just rolling the fondant. And I'm going to use this cutter to make the glasses, the frame of the glasses. Okay, going to go on the outer. Let's see if that's for the outer edge. Let's double check again. Yeah, it's the outer edge. So I have to get something smaller. I do have a variety of cutters, round cutters. I just have to find something to work. That's perfect for the eye. This is great for the pupil, the iris, sorry. That's for the iris as well. But I need something slightly bigger. As I don't think I will be able to cut the frames so small. Let's see. So I put the inner cutter and the outer cutter, and I can see it's too small. Let me just look for another one. If I don't find one, I can probably try and use a nozzle. Lots of round nozzles, and some of them can help. If not, we'll do it differently. Let's see. Let's try with this. Okay, if we place this in here, still not going to help too much. As I cannot see through, I have to guess if I've done it right. Okay, we'll see if it works, because I have to also dry it round. And then just quickly do another one. It's much easier when you have two open cutters, that you can see what you do. Okay, just cutting. We'll see if we can use those. If no, we'll try to sort it out differently. Then to do the bridge in between the frames, we'll just use a little piece of paste. That's it. If those pre-cut frames don't work, we'll do the same. We'll use the same method to make the frame, so it's fine. And then we also have to do the hinges. And use the smoother. Those are things which we can correct even after. That's fine. One, I think, is going to be enough for both hinges. And then we have to do the white and black. Oh, that's far too firm. For the white of the eye, I'm using the same Saracino modeling paste, which can be rolled out quite thin. So you roll it quite thin, and then you make sure that it comes away from the surface before you start cutting. And I did say this looks to be a nice size for the eye, but you can also do the eye a little bit bigger and then put the frames right on the top. So we can try the both and see which one looks the best. So I'm going to cut 1 and 2. That's the largest option. And 1 and 2 for the smaller option. We'll see which one looks better. Then we have to do the iris. I think this is going to be okay. It's slightly bigger than I want, but I can always just stretch the paste. So I'm going to press and then jiggle a little. That will bring the paste towards the center, will make the iris a little bit smaller, and same with this. Okay, now the white dot, we can paint that one. For example, we can add a little bit of paste. That's no problem. We'll see how that is going to look like when it's finished. So okay, to make a pencil, let's see, we've got a different color here. So we're just picking different colors. We'll just do a red pencil. It doesn't need to be very long. And it's also modeling paste, so it's a bit firmer. Whenever you feel that it's too firm, you can place it in the microwave for a sec. Oops, 1 sec, not 10 seconds. And it becomes much smoother. I will show you how. You see, so it's much smoother now. It's literally that cocoa butter and the fat inside of the paste, they melt. So if you leave the paste in the microwave for too long, then it literally melts. So you have to make sure that it is not left inside for a very long time. And then you continue to roll. Use your smoother till you get to the right size. Whatever that size is, depend on if you want to mimic the size of the one in the photo, or you want to make one larger, one smaller, whatever. Again, if that doesn't dry, you can insert a wooden skewer through. I'm going to cut one end, and I will also cut the other end, but I will try to make it round. Okay, because what I'm planning to do here is to attach a bit of a lighter color. And I'm going to make this like a teardrop shape. Yeah, so a ball shape, and then roll into one side like a teardrop shape. And that's going to be set. You do practically candles in the same sort of way. So you just roll this. You don't need glue. If you need to, you can put a little bit, but typically you don't need glue. So you start just rolling to straighten this. If you want, you can paint the top, or you can remove it and add a touch of black color, or whatever color you want your pencil to be like. But if not, you can leave that light color, and you can color the top with a bit of with a food marker. But you can also attach a piece of paste and then just make the pencil. Okay, and that has to go to dry as well. It's obviously a very quick method of doing things, because it's a competition cakes. If you want to make everything to look perfect, that just takes time. It's not our purpose. The purpose of the demo is not to make things perfectly, just to give you inspiration, help you to pick various ways of doing stuff and transform them so they suit your style, so you always can adapt things. So we've got now pretty much everything we need. I'm not going to stress on this book, because this can be made in the same way as we do this part here, or you can literally just roll some paste and just make it out of fondant, because it's just a small part of the book. It's not a full book. That doesn't require too much. Just looking this might be okay. Okay, so say for example, you can use a piece of fondant. Yeah, even that big, but it's just so much fondant. And then just rub them. The brown fondant over here is a bit too thick. Let me just trim it a little. It's just far too thick. And obviously if it's too thick, it takes away too much fondant. Okay, so that literally just looks like a book. You can put some lines in here to mimic the thighs. Then this brush has a little bit of purple. So if you keep brushing, it's going to highlight that look of the pages. And you can also put a sign of a book, which I'm going to make out of red. And you are done. So that's not super complicated. Okay, just going to put this in here. Okay, so that literally can just be that little book which you've got on the side. You can put a little bit more texture into it, onto the cover, put some decorations or do some painting, or there are many ways of finishing this bit and attaching this on top of the cake. Or also you can use the method which we are going to use to set the chocolate box all together. Good, so let's now go to the isomalt thing so that we make the apple. I've got already some isomalt ready made, so I'm going to warm it up. I've warmed it up before we started the session, but obviously it got cold. But whenever you rewarm isomalt, if it's very cold, you have to do it same like you do with your chocolate. 30 seconds and then another 30 seconds. You don't need to stir or anything, but just do it repeatedly, because what happens when the isomalt cools, it sets, it shrinks somehow. Not like the chocolate does, because it doesn't crystallize, but it just gets a little bit, you know, it releases all the air bubbles, and the volume is quite small. Now, when you put it in the microwave, all the particles are starting to warm up the sugar, and the sugar starts to expand, and you might end up with a cracked jug, especially if you've got a Pyrex jug like I do. If you've got a silicone bowl, then it's no problem, because silicone is elastic, but this is quite firm. So if you put the isomalt in and you set to 5 minutes, considering that this is a thermo resistant, you might end up with a big crack, because it's just rigid and it doesn't allow the sugar to expand. So you have to do it repeatedly. If it's silicone cup, then it's fine. Once it starts warming up, then you can increase the time if needed, but you have to get it to a decent temperature before attempting to heat it up quite strongly. Okay, so I'm just going to put the fondant on one side. We'll just blue the apple and make a quick leaf. And then we'll start covering the cake. So yeah, I think it will take us more than 2 hours. But if you have something else to do, then you can always watch what I did say on the Facebook group or on YouTube. Probably will be available tomorrow. Good. Working with isomalt, I have to put some gloves on. I'm referring to the, can't see them, I think I left them on the other side. I have to use some cotton gloves. Now the isomalt it starts getting quite bubbly, you see, it's quite hot. So I have to get it to the right temperature for blowing. Now to blow the isomalt, I've got a little pump. And I will also need a knife, which I've got here. And my gloves. I was saying about the gloves, and I need my nitrile gloves, but I also need my cotton gloves, which are probably on the other side. I'm going to put the green isomalt to warm up. I'm pretty sure I picked a pair of gloves. You see, you can hear my isomalt cracking. You see, it starts cracking on the jug. Yeah. So if you don't do it like 30 seconds intervals, then it's not just the isomalt cracking, it's the jug cracking as well. So just be careful. So I'm going to put some gloves to protect against heat and against sweating. And then over those cotton gloves, I will put my nitrile gloves. Okay, I'm just going to change the camera so you can keep me company. Okay. Not signs yet of hot isomalt. Okay. When you work with isomalt, you also need to use a heat-proof mat. Make sure you don't damage your countertop or the worktop. I do have few marble mats. If you've got anything like this, it's also good, but you still need to get your silicone mat, even if it's not heat proof like the one you use for baking. This does behave nicely even if the temperature goes over 100 degrees, but it starts curling at one point. I put some chocolate, so I want to wipe the chocolate off. So for this project, because I only have to blow a little balloon, this much will be enough. But typically it would be just like a full-size silicone mat, like the one here. Okay. One or the other will do. I put this in here so that the light doesn't reflect, because it's too much white and it just starts creating waves. Now I'm going to start with the little leaf, because I've got to use some runny isomalt for making the leaf, and this is already runny. So I'm going to pour some of my runny isomalt. I only need a little leaf, so just a little bit of this isomalt. Okay. Okay. Then, with the help of a knife and a damp cloth, the blade has to stay all the time cold. If it's not cold and if it's not clean, then you will stick, the sugar will stick to it. So always make sure it's clean and it's cold. Okay, and I'm just going to try and shape this as a leaf, and then I will put a line through the center. Let's see if you can see this. Yeah. So I will keep dragging that line to the center as the sugar is cooling, because it's so hot. See, already started to get warm. Because it's so hot, it tends to kind of make the lines to disappear. So you have to do it till you notice that the lines are in place and they don't disappear. It's literally the temperature, controlling the temperature. Okay, you see now the lines are not going away. But if you want to put a little bit more texture, you can always go over and do it. Okay, but at one point you will get the effect you want. Now make sure all the time the blade is clean and cold. Okay, once it's firm enough so that you can take it away from the mat and you don't lose the texture, you can leave it to cool down, chill out into a curved shape if you want to. Okay. Now I'm just trying to think, what shall I use? What shall I use? So I need a piece of silicone just to maintain this nice shape. Or for the leaf. Don't know where I can. I think I'm going to put it over, if I can. Over the pump. Okay, that should be okay. Now I have to pour my red isomalt, and I have to cool this so that I can blow that balloon and transform it into an apple. I don't need very much, but when you use just a little, you have to control the temperature, and that's the most challenging thing. You do remember I got a little fan on the side, which I'm going to turn off or turn on one side, because that's going to chill out the area far too quick. Oh, this is fine, this can go on the side. It's not going to change the shape, it will stay curved. And I will start folding in the sugar. Now, it's a full theory behind cooling the sugar. I'm not going to start talking about it. I will just literally start cooling the sugar to get to the right temperature. But when you cool the sugar, you intend to maintain the temperature, so you always bring the sugar from the edge towards the center, and you intend to maintain a uniform temperature, so when you reach about 50-70 degrees, then it's nice and you can fold it, get the air in and start blowing. Obviously you need a pump, and the pump, it can be either wood or copper. Now, in the past, when copper was not available, very easily available, they used to use like wooden pipes, but now pretty much all the blowing pumps have got like a little copper end. And see, I'm just trying to cool it down. It might not be the right way to do it, because doing it this way, it will cool down, but will incorporate some air unevenly. I mean, small and large pockets but it will do. I mean, it's such a small project to do. I don't have to worry about being so precise. But ideally it would be to get an even size texture of air bubbles inside of the sugar so that it can behave properly. So I'm trying to cool it down. Once it cools down enough, it will come away from the mat. So I'll start stretching. Just moving to the top camera. Where is it? Okay, so that you can see what I'm doing here. So you can hear the air pockets getting into the sugar, and you can see as the more I go inside of this piece of sugar, the more shiny look I get into this isomalt. It's literally the air makes the light to reflect it differently. Now it's very soft, so still quite hot, so I cannot start doing any blowing because it will not behave properly. So I have to cool it down so that it maintains the shape. But it is quite hot, so I'm trying to chill out my hands as well, not just the sugar. Okay, now that is firm enough, I'm going to do it with the easiest method possible. I'm going to shape a little hole inside, pressing my thumb, but not making this wall too thin because it will collapse. Yeah, just trying to get like a little cup, and then with my copper pipe, I will place this in here, and I will try to grab all the sugar around the pipe, and then I will squeeze to make sure that I've got air coming through. At this point, I will get my small fan next to me, as this will help me to control the temperature. But because what happens, I've got very high temperature inside of the bulb, but the exterior will start cooling down, and I want to make sure that the sides and the top will expand uniform, and I will get the same sort of thickness on the walls, so that when it comes to shaping, I don't get a thin part and a thick part. Okay, at one point obviously I will have to stop because the sugar will be so cold on the outer edge, it will not allow me to go any further with the size. At this point I will try to press in just to get the shape of the apple. Yeah. If I want, I can just blow a little bit more air, but I'm just perfectly fine with this. And I'm going to get my scissor, I will keep this in front of my fan, and I will gently start cutting around the pipe to release that apple. Now, if it doesn't cool out completely before you leave it to rest on the surface, it will collapse. And the reason why it collapses is that you still got a lot of heat inside. Okay, so you have to keep it in front of the fan till it cools down completely, and then you can remove it. The thing is, if you don't cut before it gets cold, then it's very sensitive, and if you don't take your time, then you might crack it. So because we are kind of running late, I want to get it done as soon as possible. Yeah. So we'll just try to gently push in. So this is my little apple. I'm going to put the leaf in a sec. Now this end, it looks a bit untidy. I can try and trim this with a scissor, but if I want to do this a little bit more, what I have to do is just to get my spirit lamp. Now I don't need my little fan right here. This excess sugar typically comes off fairly easy. If not, you can place this on top of the jug so you don't get sugar everywhere. And as I said, it's typically not very difficult to remove. Good. Now I bought a spirit lamp. It's got a particular type of alcohol, and I'm going to light up. Of course, this is the one which doesn't work. I've got another one here. Okay, so I'm going to tidy up this end by just softening the sugar with this flame. It's literally just warming up the base. It will just allow the sugar to relax, and I will just set it flat somewhere, but on a silicone, not on a piece of paper or something to ruin the surface. And also we'll just warm up the base of the leaf and stick it here. Okay, I'm just going to turn off the flame and cover it. Yep, so that's our little apple made out of hot sugar. Good. So what we have to do now is to get ready, roll out our fondant, start covering, and then just do the chocolate box as well. Now, to finish off the chocolate box, I have to warm up some water, and I will need a hot plate. So I'm going to put the kettle on, pinking all the bits and place them on the side so I can get my table clean. Okay. I've mentioned about this fondant that it works beautifully, but it's also super firm. And my hands are very weak, so I might need to put this in the microwave. To start getting it so much easy to work with consistency. And about a ½ kilogram, it should be enough. So I'm going to place this in the microwave, but just for about 5 seconds or so. Just a bit softer. I do have a large rolling pasta rolling machine, and I typically use that one, but it's on the other side and it takes too much to set it. You can also use some vegetable fat like the Trex if you want to condition the paste, but this fondant, comparing with the cheap fondant, it does have already some fat inside. So my water is hot, so I have to start rolling the fondant. So I always start with the smooth side down. Now if I look at my handbag, I'm just going to roll 2 small strips will go on the side, and one will go on the front, and the other one will go on the back and over. But I know that the width should be about 5 inches. I will actually take the cake out and I will measure to make sure. But to be on the safe side, I'm going to roll a strip about 8 inches wide, and then I will just, hopefully that's going to be enough for the whole project. Now before starting to roll, I will try to squash the paste so I can enlarge it before starting to roll, because I said I've got very weak hands. Just looking for my rolling pin, which doesn't seem to be here. I've got at least 10 rolling pins, and of course when you need one you cannot find it. So I'm going to start rolling. Trying to massage this fondant, stretch it to get to the starting point, because I said it's super firm and I'm just rubbish. I've got no strength in my arms at all. Okay, so I've got about 8 inches wide piece of fondant right here. So I'm going to start pressing and stretching the fondant along. Well, this is not a typical fondant. If you haven't used this fondant before, get yourself a pack and you will see what I'm talking about. You can stretch it and pretty much get it to the thickness of a gum paste. So you only need a little. So this ½ kilo will be more than enough to cover the cake. Literally with 1 kilogram, you can cover a 3-tier cake. It's so versatile. But the thing is, it puts so much pressure, because you have to have very strong wrists and be quite fit, which I'm not. So keep stretching. It's not necessarily that I'm aiming for particular size. I'm aiming for a particular thickness, as I don't want to use very much of this fondant. Once I get it quite thin, I can slide the rolling pin and enlarge the surface. And I have to lift the paste and do it again, because what happens, this fondant will stick to the surface, and no matter how much you roll over, then it will not stretch, because it's literally stuck to the surface. So from time to time you have to help the fondant to get stretching. And you don't roll anymore. That's a much easier job, because you just slide your rolling pin. You lift, place the other side, and just carry on in the same direction, but just be careful not to create creases or anything else, because now you've got like irregular thicknesses on the side. And you can just literally slide your rolling pin and get to the corners and stretch. Okay, but just to show you how, yeah, it just works beautifully. It does have some marble effect, but that was because the paste was not mixed properly. That's how it came out from the package, and I didn't want it to put too much pressure on my wrists to mix it. I've noticed that there's a bit marble inside. Typically, you don't see that marble effect, because I think they add the color and the process of preparation right from the beginning. I don't think they make the paste in white and then color, or maybe this was an exception. Okay, so I've got the fondant rolled out, so I'm going to get my cake and we'll start to cover. I don't have a fancy board. The board I've got here is just like a plain board, as it was not enough time to do everything. But I'm not going to use this board yet because we have to do the chocolate box first. Okay. So I said about the cling film that it can also be used to smooth the surface in case they need to do any smoothing. Or you can just use some more buttercream and then just level if you want to. Just going to put some gloves on. Yeah, and you can also just use like a plastic strip if you want to. That's quite soft, and it will also help you to smooth the surface of the cake if needed. If you are not too sure about the size and you don't want to waste the time in taking the measurements, you can literally just flip the paste over the cake and then just cover the cake in the way you normally do and put an extra strip over to do the flap of the bag. So I'm going to trim to the size required in a sec, just taking some measurements. So for doing the sides, I need about 4.5 by 5. 4.5 by 5, and to do this one about 6.5 by 5. 6.5 and 11. I was checking to make sure that I've got enough here. Yeah, I do have enough to do the sides and the whole thing. So I'm just going to trim this bit and this bit. Let's change the camera. Where is it? I got lost in knowledge. What am I doing? Don't know why I've got too much light. Yeah, is the board. Okay, so I've got this paste ready rolled. So I need 4.5 inches to do the side, and then the rest. Yeah, so 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. You can join those bits, and in here, got to trim this as well. I know this should be about 5 inches. Just double checking again. 5 inches. And that's 5 inches. Okay, so that will go on one side. I'll just change the camera to the for a lateral viewing. Oops. Okay. Yep. So literally, I've got this. If you want to get it much smoother, you can smooth before applying the fondant. But I'm not going to spend the time now because it's quite late. Just looking for the scissor, and I will just trim the excess so that I can reuse this part of the fondant. What I can do is, using the smoother, I can just smooth the area. I think it looks fairly decent considering the amount of time we spend on finishing. Is just great. And the same thing in here. Yep. doing the same thing. If you have to smooth, again, just use the smoother or the flexi smoother if you've got one. So by the time you add all the decorations, I think you'll be just fine. Okay. And then we have to do the rest. Good, so we did the sides of the cake. So now we have to do the rest. So there are two ways to do it. You can either place a strip over and then attach a flap right on the top, or you can do those separately, leave this part uncovered, and then just put the flap over, whatever you prefer. I think I'm going to go for doing this out of two pieces. So we'll just come up to here. Okay, so I've done the back, the front, whatever, first. And then I'll just do the same thing on the other side. Now, if, for example, you are in a rush, like we are now, but you still want to get a super neat effect, you can also use some rice paper. If you use the rice paper, just to give you an example, I'm going to cut this. As typically, you have to cut it to whatever shape size you want. Okay, so you stick this onto your cake, and then you grease, and then you put your fondant over, and obviously everything is going to look super smooth. I'm actually using it for the flap, so just bear with me 1 sec. I'm going to do the side first. I'm pretty much happy with the way how the side looks like. So, okay, and in fact I can just flip this over. I don't need to do it separately. If you do it separately, you can also do some stitches. You can be more creative. But I was saying about this shape. What I'm going to do here, okay, I'm not going to take this paste, the fondant away. I will only use the scissor and trim. Okay, then take this away and get some paper. Obviously have to do the paper before you attach it to the cake to make sure it doesn't get into a different size. That's not the size I want. Okay. Told you, dear dears, come along as I do my thing. So, but to make sure that that stays in place, I can use some buttercream. So I will use some buttercream in here and also some buttercream underneath. Okay, and then just come with this over. What's going to keep you is a smooth finishing, first of all, and secondly, it will make it to look like is kind of a, and I'm going to cut through both paper and fondant. And we'll just make the this to stand up even more. Now if you want to get a bit of a crease, you can very easy just fold the paper. But in time it will get a bit softer, and obviously your fondant will get over and it will look nice. This fondant is also quite stretchy. It tends to behave like an elastic paste. Okay. Then looking at our handbag. Now with this front of the bag, what you can do is, for example, you can create this separately and apply it like a pocket. And I think I'm going to do that just because it's easier for you to see from the top what I'm doing. If I consider this being the side of the cake, okay, I have to just see if I've got enough room here. I have to cut a little bit more. And I can just attach this onto the side. Okay. So if I consider my eyes, get a bit of Trex and stick the eyes to make the nose. Now in case that flap is a bit too long, I can trim it. Yeah, so I can trim this part if it's a bit too long. Nose, sorry, what am I thinking of? I can just make a little nose out of some paste. Okay, then I've got my irises to set, again with some Trex. The reason why I'm using Trex is that you can always change your the way how you position your items, if they are, you know, whatever they are, the eyes and so on. I also have here some leftover rice paper, as I've used a puncher, so I can use this to create the effect of sparkle in the eye. I always keep them on the side just in case I need them, into a little cup. And they work perfectly for figurine making. Now let's see if those glasses can be used. I think they are fine. I mean, they are not the perfect glasses. Again, if you want to stick them, but not for good, because you might decide that they are not quite the right ones, just use Trex. And stick them with Trex, and then you can always take them away and the fondant will not get stained. Then what else do we have? We've got a little hook in between the frames. That is a bit too long. Okay, then you've got the both bits to put on the side. One, it looks a bit shorter than the other because the cake is offside, but they both should have the same length. And again, I'm going to use some Trex to stick one, and then just try and replicate. There's something similar in here. Anyway, it's just a funny cake, so it doesn't have to kind of do a perfect replica of a pair of glasses. It's just mimicking some glasses. Then to make the mouth, you can either paint or, if for example you take a round cutter and you place it right here, you can see that the curve of the upper lip is literally similar with the curve of this cutter. So you can just emboss. Okay, and then using a Dresden tool, you can carry on applying a deeper smile, and then with the curved end of the tool, you can put a little mark here and rounding. Then what else do we have to do is we can brush this with a deeper color so it just stands out better. And also we have to put that little smile, and we start curving this bit from here. So from here up to, let's see, here. Now we have to cut a pink piece of paste and put over here, or we can paint, but painting is probably not going to do a very good job, so you might want to just get a small piece of pink paste and shape it like an kind of elongated type of piece of paste, and then just place it in here. If you want it even brighter in color, you can always add some more dust to it, or you can make it white if you don't have any pink, and then just brush with pink. Okay, but that's the kind of effect we are trying to get. So this full panel can be attached to our cake. Again, I'm going to use some tracks and see how that's going to look like. And if it takes too much space away, then I might not put the front pocket, and I will just leave my funny figure here, which I think I'm going to do, because then I can put my other decorations, including that yellow piece of paste. With that one, I will just get the paste and roll it. Use smoother. You have to do it quite long, or if you do more pieces, that's no problem, but you have to do them all at the same thickness, and then just flatten. Okay, and that can go on the side of the cake. If it doesn't stick, you can put some glue, or you can put some tracks if you want to, whatever you decide works the best. I also want to lift this a little, because I have to put the, you have to put the books, or you have to put other things in here. So you can always just lift and put whatever you've got to put. If you don't have anything to put, you can even put like a piece of cake, a small piece of fondant, just to give that impression. And I think I can just lift up my cute figure a little. Oh, it came out completely. As the fondant started to get some condensation, fine. Okay. So, just putting some glue on the edge and then sticking this yellow. You can also cut strips of paper if you want, like rice paper. And attach just going to put some in here. But that's again time consuming, so I'm not going to stress too much on this bit. And I don't have enough yellow to carry on, so already made enough to work as example. Okay, now with my support, if you find that this, for example, is a bit too heavy and it will slide off from your cake, what you can do is just to insert a toothpick and then use this to support and get this attached to the cake. So even if it comes a bit forward, you will have enough support on the toothpick, so it will not collapse. Or you can put it over if you want to. Say, for example, you want this to look like it's part of the flap. You can glue it, but till it gets dry completely, you can very easily support it with a toothpick. Then right here on the front, if you want to, you can attach this little bag which we've created. It's not enough room for it, so that is optional if it stays there or not. This is kind of dry, so you can remove this and either use Trex and just come over with the flap, or use glue if you want. That's also done. So we've got the apple, we've got those beads, we have to put the handle. Now with the handle, I would suggest to get a toothpick first and drill the holes, because if you remember, we've got the rice paper. So just put one side first and then mark where the second should go, or just push the toothpick first and then put the rest. Ruler. It's not fully dry, but I did say if you want to, you can insert a toothpick through so that it stays supported on one side, or you can use a larger wooden skewer like this one. Maybe just cut part of it. In here, and you can just place the ruler on the side. Ideally would be to leave it to dry till it fully dries, and then it would be just much easier to set, because it becomes floppy and it would be a shame because everything looks great. And same with pencil. Let's stick this in here, as if it's stuck with some glue, it's not going to continuously twist around. So you've got your pencil in here. Then the arms. Which one is which? That's the one in here with the thumb up. Okay, so we get one of the wooden skewers, and we cut maybe that much, insert on one side so that you can place the arm in here. Okay, have to work out how to place this first, because it just doesn't look great. It's not dry, so it will just spoil the... You can back up with some candy melt. I will still leave it to dry while we are dealing with the box. Then the other arm, which should be somewhere here. But with this arm, you can even just stick it to it. It doesn't have to be inserted on the wooden skewer unless you want to get this done. But we put the fingers, mark the fingers this way, and we can just place it right here. It's like it's flying. Good. Again, with the pencil, if you want to give more strength to the pencil, you can insert a wooden skewer through it. Now this is a bit firm, so it will not allow me now. I can insert a wire, but I don't want to put a wire in here. So we'll see. Maybe I will just stick the pencil in here somewhere. It doesn't have to go inside of the bag. Okay. Now, so let's have a quick look at the chocolate box. Good. Just trying to sort out this little cake, this little creature. We have to just get the chocolate box. Super. Take this out of the way. Good. Covers of the book. That's the side which we are going to use to finish off the book. This is going to be a bit time consuming, so I will probably just explain how everything should be done. So if you cut strips with a hot knife and you attach them around, then you can pop the lid and then put this bit on the side. I'm only going to do one as an example. So I've got some hot water. Now if, for example, you want to set this on a board, I would suggest, where is the board? I would suggest to scratch the board and then just drill through one of the covers so that you can put a wooden stick and you can secure this with some chocolate. Because if you only put the box and you have to travel, it will slide. So just to make sure that it stays secure. But you get this on here. I'm not going to secure it for myself because I'm not going to travel anywhere with this cake. So I've got just some hot water in here and metallic plate, and I have to put some more hot water into a pot, and I also need a knife. Okay. So, let's go to this camera. So this is obviously far too large in size, so we'll have to trim some of the chocolate. and it typically goes very quick, even if I kind of break part of it or try to be quick. That's an extensive project, especially that when it comes to a multitude of skills like hot sugar, chocolate, carving, covering. Okay, that's good, but it's far too long, so it also has to be shortened. This can be brushed with gold, or it can be left white, or so don't worry if it gets a bit messy, but if it gets messy, it's chocolate, so you can just clean it off with slightly warm cloth or a knife or whatever. So it just comes very easy away. But I would probably put like a decoration out of maybe just use the mold and just create a nice texture. So when you do the side of the box, you have to take in consideration that this edge has to be the height of your side. Okay, so I have to mark literally that much, and by just continuously shaving you end up cutting through, but the blade has to be warm. You can re-warm if needed. Don't worry about untidy finishing, because when you start, oh, I think I've done it the other way anyway, so I have to trim now this part as well. Okay, so for example, I've got this warm, and I'm going to shave this so that I can stick it into here. Typically, if the cover is very cold, it will stick automatically. This will also have to be cut. Okay, and this part as well. I'm only going to do the side, so exactly the same thing has to be done on the front. So I'm just going to get it done here and here. So typically it gets stuck immediately. To get it stuck properly, you can also just pipe some melted chocolate on here. So then you know for sure that nothing is going to go wrong. But in our case, either way, I'm not going to wait for things to set. So I'm looking for something same height with my, yep, I think that's going to go. So I will just warm up this and this, and stuck it into here. See if it stuck properly. What I can also do, get some of that chocolate and put it here. I need a bit more, but that means I have to melt, and that's just more time. So, okay, I'm going to place this in here. Maybe 2 of those bits will help me to secure the top. Okay, obviously this is not going to be attached in any way, so you have to make sure that you finish the box, but this will just be like a lid. And No water. Okay, just trying to clear up and put the whole thing together, including the apple, and we are done. Obviously I will tidy up and make sure all comes nicely so that you can see the final product, but I hope you picked up some useful tips for you to make the projects or a similar project. Okay, and also to give you an idea about how to deal with organizing such a project. Maybe to make it to look like perfect, I will need another extra hour, because those little things, they are the one which take the longest to make. To move this to one side. Let's say this can be brushed with gold, with whatever. You can obviously lift the lid. The side came apart as well. Lift the lid and then fill with chocolates. But you can do that later. Just trying to tidy up, and as it's not set here, the chocolate gets quite messy. I only need this as a support. Also, to finish off the board, you can cover the board in fondant, which I probably am going to do later. And you can put, you know, things like ribbons around the board and so on. We'll just stop for now. Getting into the cake. Trying to place the turning table. So ignore the back of the cake for now. Now to transfer, I have to get a spatula. If, for example, you are afraid to transfer the cake, what you can do, you can set the cake on a cake card. Just trim, because in here I forgot to put a piece of cling film, and the sponge got stuck on the surface. Hopefully it's not going to collapse here. Oops. Have to leave enough room for the apple. Just to kind of get a final result. But you can put the cake on a cake card, and then obviously it's not going to be so tricky to transfer. Mine is just staying in the air with no support. And trying to put this ruler if it works, so if it doesn't work, we'll just leave it like that. At least we've got the pencil, and we've got the so-called book. Okay. And we've got the pocket on the side, and we have to put the apple. And to get the apple away, we just have to take this away. Now, to make sure that it doesn't collapse, you can also just put a little bit of like a toothpick or something, or a piece of chocolate, and then you can do it. So that's the replica of what we started. Yeah, I think they look quite nice. So if you attempt to do such a thing, you've got a bit of a guidance where to start and where to finish. Thank you for joining me, and see you next week on the British Sugarcraft Guild's web page, Surbiton page. or if not, in 2 weeks' time here at the Academy of Cake Decorating. Have a lovely evening.